Thank you. So can we proceed? Kindly write your name and admission number on the chat session. Sylvia has been able to do that. I'm waiting for the rest as we continue. Sorry for lateness. There was a problem with the internet and I needed to record this meeting. Now, you are to discuss on carbohydrates, not carbohydrates, proteins. The last class we had was on carbohydrates, but today we are to examine the proteins. Now, on the chat session, you can write what maybe you have been able to see. And I can see Mr. Evans raising his hand. I'm not sure whether you want to say something, but if you have something to say, Mr. Evans, you can unmute your microphone and you say it before we proceed. Now, on the chat session, I'm sure you can be able to comment or write something on proteins. And maybe because we are going only to have this session for the next 20 minutes or 30, let me start. Now, when you look at the proteins, again, they are organic compounds, and we said organic compounds, they have carbon as the major skeleton. In high school, you are able to look at hydrocarbons from alkanes, alkenes, and alkynes, and later on you'll further that knowledge on organic chemistry. Carbohydrates, proteins, and also lipids are organic compounds because they have a carbon skeleton. Now, when you look at the composition of proteins, it will have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and also nitrogen. And that is a very key element when it comes to proteins. What distinguishes protein from carbohydrates, that proteins have an additional element, which is nitrogen, and others have sulfur. Now, when you look at these proteins, the basic units we learned was amino acids. Different amino acids combine to form a particular dipeptide. A dipeptide will combine or several dipeptides running into millions will form now a protein. So there are 20 naturally occurring amino acids, which are very key and which we shall be learning in this particular segment on proteins. Other proteins may contain phosphorus. Remember, we said they have an additional element in nitrogen and sulfur, and others will contain even phosphorus. And we are also seeing a small amount of iron, copper, and other inorganic elements making these proteins. The amino acids, which are the basic elements in proteins, they are made up of 4 groups. You'll find there are 4 groups. We have an amino group, we have a hydrogen group, we have an acid group, and a side group. I'm sure with the fullness of time, look at a structure, basic structure of an amino acid, and you'll be able to see the 4 major groups being represented there. The amino group is what distinguishes one amino acid to the other and also the side group. They're able to distinguish one amino acid from the other. Now, we look at the types of amino acids. There are mainly two. We have the essential amino acids and we have non-essential amino acids. When we talk of essential amino acids, and I'm sure you are able to interrogate this matter further, essential amino acids, they're also known as indispensable amino acids. And this one, you must provide them in the diet. The body cannot synthesize the essential amino acids. And a human adult requires 8 of these amino acids. But children requires an additional 1 amino acids. So in totality, infants requires 9 amino acids. And which are these amino acids? We have threonine, we have lysine, isoleucine, leucine, methionine, phenylalanine, tryptophan, valine, and histidine. So, and this one, histidine and arginine, they are mainly required by children, but the adults do not require them. Now, we have non-essential amino acids, which are also known as dispensable amino acids. And when we hear the word dispensable, it means the body can be able to synthesize these amino acids. And they are basically, if you take, we have 20 essential amino acids, then you minus with 8 essential amino acids, you remain with 12 non-essential amino acids. And this one, you need to study them carefully so that you're able to distinguish which ones are essential, which ones are non-essential. These non-essential, we have alanine, arginine, asparagine, aspartic acid, cysteine, glutamic acid, glutamine, glycine. We have hydroxyprorine. We could also be having prorine, serine, taurine, and tyrosine. So those are the 12 non-essential amino acids for adults. That means our body can synthesize these amino acids. You don't need to take them in the diet. Once you take the essential amino acids, they will undergo metabolic processes and the body is able to generate these non-essential amino acids. Another thing you need to consider in this subtopic is how the proteins are classified. How are they classified? They could be classified in terms of physical and chemical properties. They could also be classified according to their nutritional quality. And the last classification could be in terms of their functions. But first, we look at how the physical and chemical properties. How do we classify these proteins? We could be having simple proteins. I don't know if you are able to look at that literature. And these ones are basically a combination of a few amino acids. For example, we have albumin. No, albumin is found in the blood. And we have globulins, which are found in the blood serum. We have keratin, which is found in the hair. We have the collagen, which is responsible for forming a meshwork, which enables the body to repair itself and to heal. We have elastin proteins, which are found in many body parts. We have hemoglobin, which is a carrier of oxygen and carbon dioxide. We have myoglobin, which is a protein responsible for storage of oxygen in the muscle tissues, and so many other. And so there are so many proteins that are classified under simple proteins. Now, and then we have another classification, which is conjugated proteins. Again, this in a very simple way. When you take a protein, you combine with another non-protein part, then you have a conjugated protein. And a good example, if you did your literature very well, we have lipoproteins. Lipoproteins, the word lipo from lipids, and then we have proteins. So lipoproteins are conjugated proteins, meaning we have a combination of lipids plus the proteins. We could also be having nucleoproteins. Nucleoproteins. This means they have the nucleus plus the protein. Combination of two, a protein plus something else. And a good example, I have given lipoproteins. We shall look at them as we move around. They are the protein responsible for transport of lipids from the liver to the body tissues or from the body tissues to the liver. They come in different types. The third classification of proteins are the derived proteins. Derived proteins. And these ones, it means they have undergone the process of metabolism, and another new type of a protein is formed through rearrangement of molecules that bind these particular amino acids. And a good example of these you could find there proteins such as derived proteins. You can find things like proteoses, peptones, and other peptides. So those are the three examples of derived proteins. They are derived because they come from either simple proteins or they come from conjugated proteins. And it's just through the rearrangement or the breaking of either bonds in conjugated proteins or in simple proteins. The other classification was on nutritional quality of proteins. Nutritional quality of proteins. If you looked at your literature very well, we had complete proteins or proteins of high biological value. And we also have another classification, which is incomplete proteins or proteins of low biological value. Now, there's a difference when somebody consumes protein from an animal source and a protein from a plant source. Most of the sources of protein, if they come from animal, then they are regarded as complete proteins. And these are proteins such as casein, gluten, albumin. There are many. I'm sure with the time, as you interact with more content, you'll be able to know the different proteins from plant sources and animal sources. Now, I want to look at the functions of proteins because I believe you had a lot of time interacting with the content. If you're having a challenge, if within your notes you did not see what I'm mentioning, then you may need to do more, or you come to me for further assistance, and I'll be able to assist you on how to look for content. Now, on the chat session, I want you to identify 10 functions of proteins, and maybe individually write the functions of proteins that you are able to research. Once we're able to do that, we shall have achieved the objective for this lesson. So I'm waiting on the chat session for each student to write the functions of proteins. Thank you. I believe I can be able to read some of your responses very quickly, then we proceed. You can see Evans Elema, you talked of their bodybuilding food. Now at this level, we shall expand that further. How do they build? They are part of the body parts, or they make they are structural component of many body parts. For example, the nails are made up of proteins. The hair is made up of proteins. The skin is made up of protein. The cell membrane is made up of protein. We have seen the blood also contains the protein. So they're essentially part of the body structures. Betty Chepto, you say they promote energy, and that is in case there's no enough carbohydrates and fats to generate energy for the body. That's when the proteins are used for energy. So it is a very, they are not necessarily meant to provide energy for the body. And the only energy that comes from the proteins is nearly 10% of what we require. So if an individual requires 2,500 kilocalories per day, only 250 kilocalories may come from proteins. Rebecca says production of energy. I've been able to explain that. For bodybuilding, which results in growth of body parts. Sylvia Joy. Vicky Mwikali, you said for tissue maintenance and growth. Yes, regulation of fluid balance. That is a very key function of proteins. Remember, the proteins, they are bigger molecules in the blood vessel. So what they do, they increase the osmotic potential of blood, making sure that the blood is able to retain a lot of water, and that water can be flushed by the kidney if excess. Another point you have talked of, Vicky, is regulation of electrolyte balance. I believe that is a function of the kidney. But in terms of fluid balance, the protein will do that. Sylvia talks of repair of damaged tissue. We had a protein known as collagen, and collagen normally is when you have an injury. When you have an injury in the body, the collagen proteins will help in healing that part. Evans and Celine Massey and Sylvia, I hope we have been able to explain on energy component when it comes to proteins. I've also explained used for bone formation. Celine Massey, I think you need to relook at that. Ruth KB, you are talking of transport, and a good example is the hemoglobin, normally transports oxygen and carbon dioxide. Now, they also storage. They do a lot of storage, the protein. For example, myoglobin will store oxygen in the muscles. Celine Massey, regulation, yes. Rebecca Bones, formation. We need to see how you explain further how proteins will help in bone formation. Okay, I've seen a lot of comment on bone formation, and maybe you need to explain how the proteins do the bone formation process. Otherwise, I'm very happy that you have attended this class, and I don't want to consume much of your time. The 20 minutes, at least I've been able to highlight what you need to look in proteins. You need to draw the structure of an amino acid. You need to know the components of a protein, the 4 groups in an amino acid. You need to distinguish between essential and unessential amino acid. You need to know how to classify proteins, And again, you need to look at the functions of protein. Because the sources of protein, they are very clear. We have the animal and the plant sources. So thank you very much. Unless somebody has a question, I would wish to stop there. Sylvia Joy, you can open your microphone and I'll be ready to respond to you. Sylvia, unmute your microphone.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is soybean the only plant product that contains all the essential amino acids?
Kindly increase your volume for the others also to hear.
Is soybean the only plant product
Yes.
that contains soybean the only plant product that contains all essential amino acids?
I'm not hearing. Are you asking, is soya the only, or are you saying which is the only?
I mean soybean.
Are they the only plant that provide all the essential amino acids? Now I get your question very well. Yeah, soya is one, is actually, we may say I've not heard of any other plant that provides all the essential amino acids. So I believe you have done your research well, unless there's anyone else who will give us another plant source of complete amino acid or the essential amino acids. Any other question or comment? Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy your evening. I'll send you the recording later on.
Sylvia, shukisha mkono.
Sandra, shukisha mkono. Niko na swali. Sasa. Niko na bando. Lazima tuone.
Kumbe